Welcome to the Spectrum Lounge podcast, where we discuss creatives of color disrupting the game in TV, film, and pop culture. I am your host, Rebecca Theodore-Vachon, and on this episode, we chat with writer-director Prentice Penny and actor Mamoudou Athie about the Netflix original film Uncorked. Uncorked is about a young man who feels torn between his dream of becoming a master sommelier and his father's expectations that he will take over the family barbecue business. Uncorked is currently streaming on Netflix. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for joining the Spectrum Lounge.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. I loved this movie. I had already seen the trailer, so I was really excited because I was like, Black people in wine. We hardly see that on screen. Prentice, can you tell us how you came up with this concept for Uncorked?
Yeah, I mean, originally it stemmed from wanting to write originally about a father-son story because I became a father, and it made me want to look at it made me see my father differently than how I had seen him as just a child, but now as an adult and as a parent. And I often feel like Black father-son stories in movies typically always get reduced to the crux of their conflict is always about like the father being absent, and that just wasn't like my life and like a lot of friends of my lives. And I felt like sometimes the white father son stories, like those kind of dynamics, like Goodwill Hunting or Manchester by the Sea, are kind of just very slice of life. They're just kind of regular and basic, and they just had issues as people. And so to me, I wanted to just see that reflected as just Black male humanity, reflected in a way that I just wasn't typically seeing it. So knowing that I wanted to do that, and I was kind of basing it on my father and myself relationships, where my father ran a furniture store that my grandfather started, and I was set to do the same thing, and I wanted to be a writer. But I knew I didn't want to set it in the world of furniture stores and writing because nobody wants to watch a movie about furniture stores and somebody sitting on the computer writing. So I still like the idea of like a family run business, and so something about food became really interesting to me. I had friends of mine that had family run restaurants, and also I feel like a lot of times the lessons I learned from my father, and I feel like this is typical of the Black men at barbecues, that cooking around fire is like very caveman, it's very primal. Especially for men, it just kind of gets reduced at its core. It's about sitting around fire with like talking, and I feel like a lot of times the lessons my dad and the lessons even from friends of mine that it'll just happen around the barbecue pit. Like my dad never sat me down and was like, "All right, son, here's how life works." It was always like we're barbecuing and he'll just like drop some gem on me I didn't know. And I just thought, oh, that's an interesting thing. It's very communal. And so once I had that, I was trying to find an area for the sun, and I was sort of circling areas. I knew I wanted to be an area that kind of felt a little bit more white collar, a little bit more like artistic or creative in some way. Something the father kind of couldn't wrap his head around. Like, how are you going to make money doing this? Like, I know when I first started writing, my father didn't fully understand how I was going to do what I was going to do. Like at the time, it was just like Spike Lee. And so,
Mm-hmm.
it's not like now where you can point to like Issa, Lena Waithe or Donald Glover or Chandra Rhimes and all these all these people that who do this now. And but I took a trip, so I knew I wanted to be in a sort of a world that kind of felt creative or airy or fairy and whatever. So went on a trip to Paris. I had never been to Europe for my cousin's wedding, and I didn't even drink wine before the movie. And I was like, but it's very intimidating. And I was like, but if it's ever going to happen, it has to happen. And like, if I don't like wine in Paris, it's like I'm just not gonna like it. It's like if you go to like New Orleans and you don't like gumbo in New Orleans, you just don't like gumbo. It's just not gonna happen for you. And I took a wine class, and the guy just made it super easy to understand what I was reading on a label and what the regions meant, and he just kind of made it not super intimidating. And I just got really into it. And then I watched a bunch of documentaries, and I was like, oh, this is the world the son should want to be in, like being a som. Like this is a really interesting and creative world. I haven't really seen this before, and that's really how I landed on it.
Right. So how long did it take you to write the script?
So I started. I would say I started writing it that trip, and it took me. I mean, I want to say, but I would say, I mean, like I think, I mean, every draft is different. I would say that the time I actually gave it to somebody, like, okay, here's it for you to read. I would say probably like 9 months later, where I felt like, okay, the draft is in like a good enough shape to show other people.
Okay. So when you were creating and crafting these characters, did you have any specific actors in mind while you were writing this script?
To be honest, only Nisi. To be completely transparent. I mean, I knew I always wanted the son to be like to find someone that you didn't have a level of attachment. Like I knew I didn't want this Elijah's character to be someone like, oh, I've seen this guy in like 15 movies. Um, so that to me was always more interesting. For the father, I didn't really have. I was just using my father as like a base model of kind of how this character was, and Elijah in a lot of ways is myself. But for the mom character is not like my mother at all, and I knew she couldn't be like my mother. And my parents had got divorced, so it was very different in many ways. But I had worked with Nisi on another show, a short-lived Fox sitcom called Do Not Disturb, in like '08, and we just hit it off. And she would just tell me stories about like she told me this one story, and I always get it wrong. But basically, the gist is like either her mom or her grandmother was in the hospital, and she just started kind of doing stand up to make her grandmother, her mom, laugh. And I think she had cancer. Again, I could be wrong, but that idea of somebody like that who would be like who will do whatever they got to do to kind of keep their family together became very interesting to me for the Sylvia character. And I just started writing it with Nisi's voice in mind. And so I called her. So I just always use Nisi as like the barometer. And I was like, hey, I wrote this part for you in this movie. Like, will you do it? And she was like, yeah, she hadn't even read it. But she just was
Wow.
like, yeah, I'll do it. I work with you. I like you. And she did. And, she just was like, let me know when you got the money. And when we got it, she was like, yeah, I guess I should read it now. And but that was the only and you hear stories like that, you're like, oh, I don't know if that's true, but it was 100% true in this case. She was the one person that I actually wrote the part for.
So Prentice, so Courtney B. Vance and Niecy Nash play Louis and Sylvia, Elijah's parents, and what stood out to me was that they were so believable as a married couple. Like I believed that that they were really together. Was it just natural on-screen chemistry, or were there any acting exercises that they did to make this relationship feel so real and grounded?
I mean, I think that's just a testament to how good they are. I mean, they had worked together before on this Robert Altman movie called Cookie's Fortune. That was the first time they had worked together. So they had already had experience, like a great experience kind of working together. So I'm just going to take credit that I just did what Robert Altman does and put myself
Right.
up there with him now as like recognizing good parents.
Yes.
But no, I mean, like Nisi's so like welcoming and amazing, and so is Courtney. I mean, he's so unlike the Lewis character. He's so warm and just like hugs, and he's not like Lewis at all, which is so interesting. I didn't know
Right.
what he was going to be like when I met him. I had worked with DC before, obviously, and so, but no, they just naturally had that, and that was really special to me because I also wanted to show like this older black couple, which I don't typically think you see a lot of on in movies and TV, that they loved each other. Like I still wanted you to believe, like, yo, this couple still gets down in the bedroom. Like that's important. Like you have to
Yes.
believe that. Like, and that was
Yeah.
important for me that you still feel like that they love each other. Their issues, again, it's just like one of the things that I would tell like our department heads, I was like, this movie for this family is like happening on like a Tuesday. It's not like a special time of year. It's just a regular ass day. And none of these
Hmm.
things should feel like it's Christmas time or magical, or like that's why they're solving their issues because it's Christmas time and that's more important. It's like, no, it's just a Tuesday. And like how we all just have to go through our lives in that way. And so, but they were just amazing together and so much fun to watch for sure.
Right. Yeah. One of my favorite scenes was, when they're in the bedroom talking, and I guess he made a crack at one of her wigs. And then when he
Yeah.
tries to like get romantic with her afterwards, she just turns her back and she was like, no. She just shuts him
No,
down.
no, you talked about my wig. No.
Right.
Yeah, no, I think that, yeah. I mean, I'm married. That is a very real thing that you could just make this little crack and the thing is going to go popular. It's like, no, she's going to remember that. And that's not going to go down.
So Uncorked also has one of my favorite meet cutes, when Elijah meets his love interest, Tanya, at the wine store that he works at. And there's this great scene where he compares wines to rappers. I think Jay-Z, you compare Jay-Z to a Chardonnay. He's like the granddaddy of wines. Kanye is a Pinot Grigio. He's a white wine with a little bit of spice. And then Drake is a Riesling Crisp Clean. and kind of in his feelings. I was laughing. I was just like, okay, this makes sense. This is a really good comparison. How did you come up with that?
Well, twofold. I mean, I knew I needed a, and that was one of the first scenes I wrote in the movie. I just because I was like, I don't know, I was like, is this too avant garde? Like this, whatever we're talking about this movie, this is gonna be too weird. And I was like, I knew I needed a scene that made that deconstructed wine for the
Yes.
audience in the same way that the guy deconstructed it for me and demystified it. Right? It's like I knew I needed a scene that would like take because wine can be such a heady subject or feel like what do I don't know anything about this and I knew I needed to like make the audience be like, okay, I don't have the audience now that doesn't have to know anything about wine, but you can understand. If you can understand this, then like you're on board. Like the other stuff, because it's not a movie about like talking about wine, right? It's not that kind of a movie.
Mm,
But I wanted the audience to not feel intimidated by what we were going to be discussing and showing, and so that became an easy way. And also, I wanted to show the other way, which I think like as Black people do, we bring ourselves to those things, right? We bring our swag to whatever we're gonna do, right? And so to me, I was like, okay, well, how would Elijah try to talk to another Black person just one on one about wine? Like we bring ourselves to things, and so that was important too. That he doesn't try to like talk to her from a place of like, well, it's white and it has like grapes and the grapes were growing. Like she doesn't know that. Like she doesn't know that shit. She's just like, I'm a
right.
I'm a nurse and I work in a clinic and I'm just trying to find a good wine. Like he just made it super easy to understand. I think that's where it came from. I just wanted the audience to not feel intimidated by what they were going to be watching. So like I wanted it for the audience to go like, oh, I don't have to know anything about wine to understand what's going to be happening in this movie. Like similar to the way that the guy in Paris made it really easy for me to understand. I wanted to do the same thing for the audience. And so that became like a way to do that. And also too, like she does like the Tanya character doesn't know anything about wine. So he's just trying to like to relate to her as like Black person to Black person, like, oh, here's the way you may understand it. Like you don't need to know the grapes and this and that. Like that's just too much to get into. And so I just wanted a scene that made it really easy to the audience. And I also think like as people of color, like Black people, we bring ourselves to whatever field we go to. And so to me, it was also like I'm using a Black example to explain to you this thing that typically you wouldn't use, but you'll understand because we're Black. You know what I mean? And so
Uh, right.
that was important.
Oh, great, great. One of the things that I loved about Lewis and Tanya's relationship is that she was this very supportive girlfriend, but she wasn't she wasn't afraid to tell Lewis, when he was being passive or when he was making excuses about pursuing his dreams. Was her character based on anyone? Did you have any real life Tanyas in your life in pursuing your career?
Oh yeah, my wife. She's based on my wife 100%. Like my wife's name is Tasha,
Uh-huh.
so I just was like, oh, I'm gonna call this character Tanya. It wasn't. I didn't even stretch it out. I didn't even try to like hide it from her. So no, like my wife was
Right,
always
right.
when we were dating and I wasn't a writer, I wasn't working professionally yet. She was always like, are you doing everything you can be doing? Sometimes I would self sabotage things in some ways, and she would just always call me out on that. And she just never let me just. She was like, if I'm gonna be wasting my time with you, then you better be, doing everything you could do to get there. But a lot of it is
Right.
fear, and so she always, and to this day, still calls me out when I'm not doing enough. And
hmm
yeah, she is 100% based on my wife.
Right. One of the surprising things about Uncorked too is that, I came into the movie, expecting like this fun comedy about wine. And then halfway through the movie, it just takes this turn, where we find out about Elijah's mother, her cancer reappears, and it becomes like this really beautiful story about familial love, the love between mothers and sons, and the love between fathers and sons. How did you see your own relationships with your parents reflected in this film?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think I think I think the thing that gets reflected, honestly, is like the things that are difficult to say, right, and the things you want to say. I think like Elijah in the beginning has a difficult time talking to his father, and he doesn't really know how to connect to him, and he's feeling he's going to be judged and in a certain way. And I think those were feelings that I felt about my father and our relationship too. Was like I really sometimes maybe felt I couldn't be completely honest with him, or you don't want to disappoint, and you don't. Sometimes you want to just, by sin of omission, you want to like not get into it. And so, I think some of that, was, leaning more on my mom at times, but I think like Elijah does, and leaning more on that relationship, sometimes having that character do some of your talking for you, that I think that I'm sure I exhibited with my mother. So, you're pulling from things that are like, behaviors you do, obviously. And then obviously you're trying to like extrapolate, but then how does this character do it too, Um,
Right.
so I would say that I would say, but I think the tone to me was more important because I was like nothing. I just wanted to paint like a fully three because I used the movie August Osage County as like a reference for like the family scenes. And what I love about that movie is you would be in a scene in that movie and it would start really dramatic, and then like family situations do, something can happen that can makes everybody start laughing, or scenes could start
Mm-hmm.
really happy and then turn and become really serious because of family members knowing each other. It's like that's like real life. It's like you could be somewhere on Thanksgiving or somewhere at Christmas or somewhere whatever with your family and everything's going good, and just because everybody knows everything about each other, the moment can turn left and get weird all of a sudden. And so to me, that was
Right.
important to play with tone in the family. Like this, I think that's also the thing too. Is like black families always have to be either in movies, you know, cheesy and fun all the time, or super
Mm-hmm.
serious all the time. And I was like, nobody's family is fully like that at any given point, So, and I think that's not that again to the point of wanting to make a movie that showed us as three dimensionalized human beings. It has to have those things. It has to have moments that are sad, happy, like bittersweet, and kind of everything in between.
Right. So this Uncorked is actually your directorial debut as far as on a movie, a feature film. What was that experience like transitioning for writing for TV and then actually doing an actual film? What was that like? And wearing the
Yeah,
hats
I
of
mean, I
both
think
writer and director.
yeah, I mean, I think doing a television show is much different in the fact that like, in a television show you're doing, multiple episodes. So, and you also have to honor the stories that came before the episode you're directing, right? So, and sometimes you have to honor like the season. You've been on this show 4 seasons, 3 seasons, 2 seasons, so you have a history of backdrop to that you have to honor and respect. And so, in some ways, in television, you're also mimicking the directing style of what came before it, right? So you're like trying to make a copy of that. You can still infuse your own style, but it has to kind of you can't go off the reservation pretty far. And so, so to me, that is the biggest one of the is the to me the biggest difference. Like on a movie, there's no Elijah that you know before, and there's no Elijah you're going to know after this movie. It's that this is it. So so people are watching people for a moment in time, and they're going to accept whatever it is you did, whatever you did. And so from a directing standpoint, that allows you, I think, to like take more chances in a lot of ways because there's no visual style you have to honor before or after. It's just the visual style you choose to create for the movie. And so for
Right.
me, that was very different and very fun because I could make it be whatever I wanted it to be. And so I just took a lot more chances visually and and was looking at other movies from a more visual standpoint of how do I convey this in a more visual way, right? And not just,
Hmm.
from a writing perspective. So that was the biggest transition, was just kind of shifting my mind from a writing standpoint to directing a movie and then like letting scenes breathe, or, shooting it in silhouette or shooting it all in one take, or, however it is, I'm going to shoot it all from on their backs, or I'm going to play with this idea, this concept in this scene. So it just became much more like freeing in a lot of ways that you could kind of create this thing because after it, there's not going to be any other, there's not going to be an uncorked after this. This is it. So it can be really whatever creatively you want it to be.
Can you talk to me a little bit about the soundtrack, about curating the soundtrack for Uncorked? Because it's gorgeous. It's so good. But like, how did you work on that?
Yeah, thank you. I knew I always wanted, this was something I knew very early on. I wanted you to really feel like, one, that you were hearing all Memphis artists. Like, that was very important to me. Because, like, anybody can put, like, one, we didn't have the money to, like, go after, like, big hits. But, like, anybody can put, like, a Hot Migos song in a movie. To me, that's, like, not kind of the point. So to me, also the most important thing was I wanted you to sort of see. I think expected wise was to see like the wine stuff with like classical music, and I felt like, well, we've seen that before. What would be more interesting? And to me, it was like, well, the movie's kind of about a clash of culture, not just between like barbecue and wine, but there's a clash between the father and the son. There's sort of these mashup of worlds that are kind of colliding. And I just thought, well, that's really interesting. What if like, to me, it's kind of like the salty and the sweet, right? Where you have this sort of sweet wine thing and the music makes it a little salty, right? So it's like this sort of like, again, like a mashup of sounds that don't seem like they kind of go together, but kind of do. Like I wanted you to up in the audience right away musically to be like, this is going to be a different kind of movie. There are these things that and even in the opening, right, you're like juxtaposing wine with barbecue, but you're seeing how they're similar, but you're hearing this Yo Gotti song, and so to me, it was just kind of upending the expectations of that, and also too, like I felt like again, like when Elijah's like, what is Elijah listening to when he's not in class? To me, it's like that's the stuff he's listening to when he's driving to class. That's the stuff he's listening to right before he goes to take the test. Like that. So to me, it was like, well, we often bring ourselves to that. It's like I didn't want it to be like he has to assimilate in a way like that he has to forget who he is, like or be something he's not. Like that's not the point of the movie either. And I felt like like he's bringing himself to that world. And a lot of times, Black people, we bring ourselves to that world unapologetically. To me, it's like no different when like Allen Iverson was rocking cornrows and tattoo when he first got to the NBA. He was like, I'm still going to be Allen Iverson. And then now you don't even think about, but he was one of the first people to do that. And like now, you don't even think about a player having tattoos and cornrows or whatever however they rock. You know what I mean? Like back then, it was you wore a suit and and he was rocking gold chains and Jordans and. He was I'm being me into this world. I'm not going to not be me. And so to me, that was very important musically that the sound of the movie reflect that too. So so we're here. And also too, like when he goes to Paris, that he's trying to like expand his mind. And so we hear French hip hop. Like that was also important that he's sort of leaving Memphis behind a lot of ways. And like, my thing was like, well, he probably would meet people in class that would be like, hey, have you heard this? Or because when I went to go to Paris to scout, they were sharing French hip hop with me. And I was like, oh, that's really dope. Like that should be what he's listening to over here. Like maybe some people in his class are like, you need to be up on this. And to me, so that was important. Just to always immerse you in like the world in which you were in, to me was important. Music.
Right. Yeah, I really enjoyed the scenes, the whole montage of him being in Paris, because it's this overlay. Like number one, he's already sort of like this outsider in the wine world, and then you have this other layer where he's now this African American who's now in Paris and having to interact with Black Parisians, because I think when we think about the Black diaspora, there's usually this feeling that, African Americans, that Black Americans are like the default of Blackness. And we sometimes have sort of like this, we don't see the fact that the diaspora is so expansive, that.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. Thank you.
I mean,
All
to
right.
me, that was important too, because I felt like, again, in a lot of like, like I feel like I've never seen a movie, and I'm not trying to tout like my movie as that movie, but I was like, I've never seen a movie where like Black people go in Paris or those types of, London, where it's like not like a spy movie, where it's like, that's like why I feel like white people get to go like as good as it gets, Diane Keaton and Jack Nicholson in Paris and Bridget Jones' Diary, and like, Woody Allen, and Midnight in Paris and Under the Tuscan Sun, we like white people get to go like all these, and we get to go to like Atlanta in a movie, and it's like that's cool, but like we travel, we go, I have friends that have gone all over the world, and you never see this stuff, you never see that reflected in like American movies, and so to me it was very important to see this Black man doing things that white people do all the time, which just like ride their bike through Paris or go to museums. I was like, you just never see that in, again, American movies. And I just felt like, that's what we do. And also, I also wanted to show like the Black parts of Paris, because to your point, like I think the thing is like, oh, there's not Black people there, and then, like there's Black people everywhere. And I didn't want to comment on it. It was just what it was, because I didn't want to lie. I didn't want you to watch the movie and go, well, Elijah's the one Black person in Paris. Okay, well, I'll believe it for the movie. It's like, no, we're everywhere. He's riding his bike to the Black parts too. and there's black parts in in London, Paris, Rome. I mean, everywhere. There's a Crenshaw Boulevard everywhere. So to me, that was important to see.
Oh, I love that. Crenshaw's everywhere. I do have a question from actually one of my Twitter followers, Carolyn Hines. Hi, Carolyn. She has a question for you about the
Okay.
aesthetics and the tone of the film. She says, to me, the colors are very muted and made me think of the different colors of wine. There's a lot of burgundy, soft grays, blues, and browns. Most of the bright colors come from Nisi's wardrobe. So I wondered if that was what they were, if that was what you were going for, as far as carrying the theme of wine into the visuals.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we absolutely did, especially with Elijah. Like, we wanted to play with a lot of like monotone, like monochromatic colors. Like in my lookbook, I was like, I always wanted you to sort of feel like these sort of navies, these sort of grays, and some of it was happenstance. Some of it was we were filming in the wintertime, so naturally, originally the movie, I always saw the movie being a summer movie, but I love that it ended up being a winter movie because I don't think you typically associate that type of imagery with the South. I think when people think of the South, they think of, how it's hot, but I don't think people think about how it's cold and gritty typically if you're not
Mm,
from there. And so to me,
right.
that the grittiness and the texture just became so much more interesting. And so obviously you're getting a lot of like blue, like kind of like muted blue skies. You're getting, naturally we were shooting it also in like, October, November. So you're also, some of it, you're just kind of getting natural fall colors, right? So you're getting like plums and burgundies and browns and things like that. So we really just leaned into that more, especially once he got into the wine world. And so but yeah, that was a big thing of what we wanted to do wardrobe wise. Once we sort of realized the time it was that we were sort of kind of going to be playing in that color palette. But yeah, no, that's
Right.
super smart of her to pick up on it.
Yeah. So now that you've had this experience where you've directed your first film and written your first film, how has that changed your creative process going forward? How did you feel that you changed as a writer, as a director after doing Uncorked?
Oh, I think it changed completely how I will write a scene now, because a lot of times sometimes as you write scenes, you're I think a lot of times writers, and I'm not saying every writer, but this is how I would think sometimes too, is like you're trying to think about like how the scene shapes out as a shape, in terms of information, who wants what, where the conflict is coming from, but you're not necessarily thinking about visually how does this look, right? A
Mm,
lot of times you're not really thinking about the visuals in the same way. And so to me, it's really shaped, it has only enhanced in a lot of ways. I think like sometimes if I'm like yesterday, I was working on a project and I was writing a scene and I couldn't figure out how to start it. Because I was like, oh, are we going to know this? And I understood what had to happen in the scene. But once I asked myself, how would I shoot it? And once I asked myself, how would I shoot it? Then I figured out how to write it, because I saw, oh, this is actually much more interesting if you like just hear the character but don't see them yet, and
mm,
then reveal them, right? And so like it's changed how I even approach the scene. Like visually, am I writing a scene that visually becomes just as interesting as the words that are happening? Am I writing it from that standpoint, from a visual perspective as well? And so for that, it's made me, and that actually happened this year on as I was running Insecure this year.
mm.
I was constantly thinking about, well, visually, what is that going to look like? Or visually, is that the best way to tell this story? Or is there a different way to do that? And so I think it's only enhanced my writing from that standpoint, 100%.
Right. So, as a writer, how do you overcome writer's block? Do you experience writer's block, and
Oh, all the
how do you
time.
overcome that?
Yeah, I mean, literally, like that example I just gave you is a perfect example. Was I did have writer's block. I couldn't figure out how to do the scene. Like, I just couldn't figure it out, and it was really frustrating to me. And so I just kind of took a step back and said, well, again, if I was going to shoot, I just started asking myself other questions. And I think sometimes you just got to step away from it. Sometimes I'll go to YouTube. Sometimes I'll just be on some, what's on World Star Hip Hop right now? Just some nonsense. You know what I mean? Just to like break up my mind. Just to like
Right.
have a different thought for a little bit. Because sometimes you can, stew on it, and you're getting more mad at yourself that you're not coming up with this genius right away than you are
Mm-hmm.
with like. So I've just learned like sometimes go for a walk, kind of listen to some music, kind of just do nothing, step away, come back in an hour. It might, something you might see on TV, or something a conversation somebody might tell you, oh, it gives you an idea because your mind isn't thinking about it. Like when there's this game I play called like it's like a crossword, like a word puzzle game. And sometimes I'm at night and I'm like, why can't I get this word? And I wake up the next day and I'll go, oh, it's lightning, and you just like, oh, because I wasn't obsessing about it. I kind of had let it go, and then with fresh eyes, my mind just figured it out. So 100% all the time. So I try to like, if I'm really struggling with it, I just have learned to walk away. Like there's some reason why it's not connecting, and it's not my job to like force it to connect right now.
Mm. So what have been some of your binge watch guilty pleasures, or what TV shows are you watching right now?
What TV shows I'm watching? Well, I mean, I watched Tiger King like everybody else, which was insane, obviously. Um, uh, and I love watching like white people who are like what if that was with black people, like that would just be insane. And so I just like watching like quarter white people go nuts.
Right.
And but I'm super into Succession right now. I was behind, so
Yes.
now I'm like catching up, which is obviously
Yes.
such an awesome show.
Yeah, I call it
Um,
messy white drama. I love it.
it's messy. It's the bougie Tiger King. It's like
Yes,
it's like
that's
what
exactly it.
yeah, it's like if Tiger King people had money and they were from New York. They're ruthless to each other. Let me see what else am I watching. I'm trying to think. I mean, it's like a lot of people. Like I'm watching. One thing I'm doing right now that I will say I wouldn't say like I'm binge watching or watching this way, but the one thing I'm trying to do is like watch. Use this time to also watch a lot of other directors.
Hmm.
Like their body of work. Like one thing I'm doing right now is like I just finished watching like all the Coen Brothers movies in order, and I'm like moving on to like other directors just to see like how do they. Because I'm just trying to learn more as a director right now, so I'm trying to step more into like, oh, why did they make that choice? So this was their second movie. What did they do different by their fifth movie? How did they and how did they improve? So that's something I'm really doing a lot right
Great. Alrighty. Well, thank you so much, Prentice. Welcome to the Spectrum Lounge podcast, where we discuss creatives of color disrupting the game in TV, film, and pop culture. I am your host, Rebecca Theodore-Vachon, and on this episode, we chat with actor Mamoudou Athie, star of the Netflix original film Uncorked, written and directed by Prentice Penny. Welcome, Mamoudou. How are
Hey,
you?
thank you so much.
Hi.
Yeah.
Happy Friday. So, how are you holding up under this quarantine?
You know what? I'm fortunate. Everyone, I have some friends that unfortunately contracted the virus, but everyone's like okay, and really, that's the only thing that's important. Everything else, like boredom, is. I'm happy to be bored. You know what I mean? That's the worst.
Right.
That's the worst of it. So it's all
Right.
good. I can't complain.
Good. So have you been catching up on like TV, movies, reading? Like, how have you been passing the time?
I was catching up on a lot of TV and movies, but then I made the mistake of buying a PlayStation 4. And
Ooh.
yeah, I made a huge mistake. No, no, no. This is not a good thing. I've been playing this Spider-Man game like it's my job, and it's got a
Wow.
hold on me. So I gotta cut this thing loose as soon as I beat this daggone game.
Oh my goodness. That's great. That's great. So, I mean,
Oh,
first I want to ask you, I know your family is from Mauritania. Is that the correct pronunciation?
yes, it is. Yeah.
It is. So, what does your name mean? What does Mamadou mean? Does that have a specific meaning?
Actually, it does.
Mhm.
It means the exalted one. But look,
Oh.
I had nothing
Uh-huh.
to do with this. You know what I mean? So, like, you know, you gotta take that up with my mom. Actually, I think it was because somebody helped us out, like helped us out, like saved our lives,
Yeah.
and they named me after him. So, but yeah. Anyway,
Wow.
hmm
Great. So you were born in Mauritania and then you came here
yeah, I
when
was
you
there,
were.
and I came here like when I was 5 months old. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Okay. So you grew up in Maryland, in New Carrollton, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I lived in Maryland. That was by like I think that was the Orange Line, right? By
Oh
the with the
yeah,
train.
where'd you live in
Uh-huh.
Maryland? Oh,
Oh
cool.
God, it was years ago. I lived in New I'm trying to remember. It was New Carrollton, but it was like I remember I had to take the bus to the metro. So it was like a
Sure.
5-minute ride. It was like a 10-minute ride. Yeah, but I remember New Carrollton.
Oh
It's a
wow, we
nice
were
area.
walking distance then for sure. If you're only 10 minute, right? Yeah, that's
Yeah,
perfect.
yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's
Well,
good.
depends.
So when did you decide, or when did you know that you wanted to go into acting?
I went through like three different phases in my life.
Mhm.
I think I only finally got truly serious my final year of grad school, and I still had some learning to do. But that's a long time. Let me just break it down. Uh,
Okay.
this is such a silly story, but it's the truth. So when I was about 4 or 5, I was imitating my sister, literally repeating everything like every profession she said she wanted to do, and she was getting annoyed with me, and I got bored with the game, and she happened to stop at actor, and I stopped at actor, and I was like, I guess I'm being an actor.
What?
I know, and here we are, right? No, but then,
Yeah.
of course, that doesn't like mean anything. But it stayed with me, and it just seemed like I didn't know anything about acting. I wasn't really involved with anything in the theater when I was growing up. I was in the drama club, but I only did like 2 things for them, and I wasn't committed. I'd rather have done anything really else that was like fun with my friends. But I somehow convinced myself that I wanted to be an actor, even though I didn't know what it meant. I went to this school, and I was a horrible student. I was just like having a good time in New York, wasting all this money. And yeah, no, yeah, but like it was the best thing that ever happened to me because they didn't invite me back in. And this was a school that I'm not going to put them on blast, but they invited like everybody.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it wasn't like, and they did, and the fact that they didn't let me back in was a huge wake up call. And I ended up going to this wonderful place called the William Esper Studio, where I fell in love with acting in a really legitimate way.
Mhm.
But I felt like I didn't have everything that I needed because I didn't take all the classes there, and it was more about like just the acting and some of the voice stuff there. But I'd go and see plays, and I'd see things, and I'd see like some old Juilliard students and NYU grad, and then I heard about Yale, and I heard it was like a completely like essentially free school, and I saw some of the students there, and I was like, I can't do that. Like I can't do what they're doing. I know I'm talented enough. At least I think
Mhm.
I am. At least I'm delusional enough to think I am. But I can't do it. And then I got obsessed with it and I got in. And then my final year of grad school, this is where I realized I wanted to be an actor. This is strange, but I did this beautiful play that changed my life called The Visit. And it was about this fictional town, and it was really just about like money and people and greed and morality. And the way people would stop me in the street was different from other plays. And it's because it was useful and it had like a kind of utility in society, I felt like. And I was like, oh, this is the kind of stories that I want to tell for the rest of my life. And this is how I can do this until I'm 80. And this is why I want to be an actor. So,
Right.
sorry, that's a longer explanation than you asked for, but that's the true
Yeah.
full story.
No, well, it's interesting because I know that like we have quite a few Black actors that are like alumni of the Yale Drama School. I think Brian Tyree Henry
Hmm.
went there. I believe Yahya Mateen.
That's one of my best
Uh,
friends.
oh my, you and Yahya know each other? Okay,
We
because I
were
was like, yeah.
we were just hanging out social distance wise yesterday. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. And it's funny because he has a movie out on Netflix, All Day and a Night.
We literally just watched that last night.
It was so good. It's
Yeah,
so good.
he's
It's like
great.
a really intense movie. So yeah,
Yeah, really intense.
there's a lot of good talent coming
Oh
out of
yeah.
Yale Drama
Oh yeah.
School.
Winston Duke. Yeah, yeah, it's great.
Oh, Winston Duke, that's
Yeah,
true.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Another great guy.
Do you guys like have like a group chat going on, sort of like a
We
Black
do.
Yale alumni? I
Yeah,
thought so.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Just the three of us, but yeah. Hopefully that expands soon. Um,
Uh,
yeah, it's good. It's a good
that's
time.
great. So do you recall like your first acting role, like your first legitimate acting role? What was that like?
My first legitimate, like outside of school.
Yes, outside of school. Hmm.
Oh yeah, it was at this theater that just closed down due to COVID-19. I just read about it like 2 days ago. This place called the Secret Theater. It was my first audition after William Esper Studio, and it was like Henry V. and I was playing like one of the smaller supporting parts, but I was really excited and I took it as like a good sign. I was like, oh, I booked my first audition. This is going to go great.
Mm-hmm.
And then I found out. Then I found out the truth. Yeah, that was a crazy experience. I was working with two of my best friends, and we definitely didn't do it right. But we had a great time, and it's one of like my most cherished New York memories because I just learned so much and had such a good time with my buddies. But
Great. Yeah. It's interesting because, there's been this discussion, that it started a couple of years ago where, the movie Get Out came out, right? And
uh-huh.
then, it was that whole thing where, Samuel Jackson was talking about Daniel Kaluuya. He's a Black British actor.
Yeah.
And, there's just been like this ongoing debate that, Black British actors are more classically trained than their Black American counterparts.
Yeah.
And I was just like, how did like have you been like abreast of that conversation, and seeing as you are a classically trained actor raised here, do you have any thoughts about that, or where do you think that comes from? Where do you think that stereotype comes from?
I do think naturally the English have a better facility of language as it is their language.
Right.
So like I think that actually I think a lot of people don't take that into account because that's a very the voice and like your speech is such a important storytelling tool, especially with certain writers. The better the writer, the more important. That said, I can tell you, like, there are 50,000 regional actors in the regional theater out there that can do what anyone in film and TV is doing and better. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's a matter of
Mm-hmm.
opportunity as opposed to, talent.
Right.
Because I know them. You know what I mean? I grew up with them. I trained with them. I've seen some of the best actors I've ever seen, period, in some of these schools. You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
I never really pay attention to that because it's so ludicrous that
Yes.
there's there's a particular region that's pumping out like I love English actors. Like one of my favorite actor is Sally Hawkins. You know,
Oh, yes.
she's incredible. She's everything to me. Her, Joaquin, and my buddies from school, like Yahya. I really loved watching him in school. Winston, um, but to say that there's a particular, I think there's certain things that people can appreciate more. I think there's certainly different kinds of things that certain regions are predisposed to lean into stylistically, which is
Mm-hmm.
even that feels kind of crazy to say because everybody learns from each other and everybody's like kind of it's more of like a mixing pot now. I don't think I think the idea of a British training program in America, the way it is now, is outmoded. They don't do it like that anymore. They're actually quite emotional, but they
Right.
also have the ability of language. But I've seen that here time and time and time again. I just haven't seen some of those same people get the same opportunities. And there are people in the UK that don't get to cross over to America in the same way or to film and TV. So you don't fully see the full breadth of opportunity and spectrum of the UK actors. You see some of the best actors that come over are get the opportunity because they are the best. So that's what you
Mm-hmm.
see, and that's what's represented. But I think I've answered this question. I'm just kind of I'm
Yeah.
kind of
No, no,
drumming on
I'm
and on. Sorry, it's just I've heard it so much about it. And it's just it doesn't
It
matter.
is. Yeah, because what's interesting is like even like you'll hear interviews with like Black British actors, right? And they'll be like, "Oh, which actors did you look up to?" And like the top actor that they'll mention is Denzel Washington,
Yeah,
who
it's
is
amazing.
Black American and classically trained. So it's just
Mhm.
like,
It's
okay.
ludicrous and it's divisive and it doesn't help. Like I think everybody there are good actors and bad actors everywhere. So
Mm.
like,
Mhm. Yep.
like I've met some of the best actors I've ever seen from really bad schools and some of the worst actors from some of the best schools. So it's like it doesn't matter.
Right. Right. Right.
Now, if you want to argue, like a cultural, like there's some cultural things that you can't really identify with. That's a whole other thing that I'm not even going to step into because I
Mhm.
don't
No, I get
even,
what you're saying.
you know.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's good. So let's talk about Uncorked, because I saw it like a month and a half ago, when it opened, and I got to tell you, like, number one, just when Prentice Penny had announced that he was doing this movie, the synopsis just sounded really great. It was like, oh, Black people in wine. That's something we don't usually see in movies, because Sideways is actually one of my favorite movies. I love
Oh,
that movie.
cool! I love Paul Giamatti. I actually did play with him in school. Yeah,
Oh my gosh, that's
yeah,
great. Yeah.
yeah.
So and the trailer came out, and then yeah,
Mhm.
I watched the movie, and it was like I it's like this great mix of like comedy and drama. Is this great, drama about Black love and family, but it also has it's very funny times, but it's also very dramatic, and it gets really deep
Mhm.
really
Yeah.
quickly, and you're like, oh my God. So how did you come to this project? How did you find out about Uncorked? And was there an audition process? What went into that?
Oh, yeah, Prentice was not just going to give me this. Yeah, I definitely had to audition for this. Yeah, it was just like a Skype. Things were, I guess, going pretty good, and I guess I was on the list, and so we had a Skype, and I loved talking to him. I mean, you spoke with him. He's a great guy. He's hyper
He is.
intelligent, like so loquacious. Like he's an exciting person to be around.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, I had read the script, but like, especially after talking with him, I was like, I gotta work with this guy, and I want to have a working relationship with this dude because he's gonna, like just the way we're talking about film and movies, we're just very much aligned. Um,
Right.
and so then I eventually, like a month or change later, like I think that something I was doing conflicted, but then they shifted. Anyway, I ended up auditioning and I booked it, and I was, super excited. The script just made a lot of sense to me on the page, and the thing that I really loved about it is that he just wanted to tell this like really simple, beautiful story about a Black family and this young Black man who wants to be a sommelier, and
Mm-hmm.
that's and the it's so messed up that that's kind of a revolutionary act still.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So like, but that's what drew me to it, and his writing and like him and everything, and I was very fortunate to have booked it.
That's great. So how much did you know about wine before you booked the role?
I knew what red wine was and white wine was, and I love a good rosé.
Right. Right. So what kind of preparation went into playing Elijah, playing that side of him becoming a master sommelier? What kind of research did you do?
Oh, right. Well, they really hooked me up. They hooked me up with Dylan Proctor, who's famous partially due to Somm. And so he gave me like my first preliminary like bearings. He told me what books to get. He took me out. He introduced me to some sommeliers while I was in New York. And he was just like kind of a resource that I could lean on at any moment. So that was wonderful to just know that I had him in my corner. And then when we got to set, we had Ryan Radish. He's a Memphis-based sommelier who's amazing, and like he broke it down to me, like the grid system, how it works, how it's even, because I was not. My goal was to just understand how it's possible to
Mhm.
sniff a wine and be able to place its region. Like I didn't understand how that was possible.
Right.
So, but I wasn't going to get all of that information in a month. So I just need to know how it's conceivable so I don't look like a liar when I'm saying these lines. And he made that conceivable to me in 30 minutes. So
Wow.
yeah, dude's incredible. And he was just on set, like helping with pronunciation and like, basic detail oriented things. And the movie wouldn't be the same without him, either of those
Mhm.
guys. So that's how we got started with the wine. And now I feel like I have a, beginners level but comprehensive introductory level knowledge of wine. It's pretty cool.
Oh, that's good. And so, of course, we know that in the movie, his family owns a barbecue restaurant. Did you eat barbecue? I mean, how was there barbecue on set for you guys to eat? Because I was hungry. I was hungry. Also, I wanted wine while I was watching the whole
Yo,
movie.
I was eating between takes because they would make those ribs and like they were there, So like, I'm not gonna eat them. Are you kidding me? I'm eating that. I gotta eat.
Right.
It looks so good. I can't. I think about it at least every week about the barbecue in Memphis. Oh my,
Oh my. Oh
yeah.
yeah, so you guys actually shot in Memphis, Tennessee.
Oh yeah, it's great.
Right.
Love shooting there. We had a really good time.
Great. And so Sasha Compare plays your love interest,
Mm-hmm.
Tanya,
Mm-hmm.
in the movie. And I have to say that the meet, it was like the best cute meet I've ever seen in like a rom-com in a romantic movie in a very long time, where Tanya's character walks into the wine store and then you basically break down the different wines, comparing them to wrappers. I love that. That was so cool. I think he said Jay-Z is a Chardonnay. He's kind of like the granddaddy of wines. And
Yeah.
then Kanye is a Pinot Grigio with a little bit of spice to it. And then Drake, my favorite one was when he compared Drake to a Riesling,
Yeah.
crisp, clean, kind of sweet, and in its feelings. I
Yeah.
thought that was hilarious.
That is pretty good.
So I mean, when you got that, so what was it like actually shooting that scene with Sasha? That was so funny. I'm sure it was probably hard for you to kind of not laugh between takes, but it was really good.
Well, no,
Um,
actually, we weren't even thinking about how funny it was because I mean, we'd read it like a month ago, and like, it was like,
uh-huh.
okay, we got it. But it was like
Right.
our first day of shooting, so I think we are just caught up in nerves, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
At least I was, and like, it was just about like, okay, like, are we? Let's find the groove here, and we found it. But I think that was like that was all that was going on in my mind. Like, am I messing this up? you know?
So one of the things that I really loved about Elijah and Tanya's relationship is that Tanya, she was like this very loving and supporting girlfriend, but
Mm,
she was tough on Elijah. Like there were times where she would kind of tell him, listen, you need to suck it up and go after your dream. And
yeah.
I have there been any Tanyas in your lives, or when you think about your own personal life, which women have been in your life that kind of pushed you the way that Tanya did?
Oh my God. I mean, I got to start first with my mom.
Mm-hmm.
Like my mom is true, like the definition of number one fan. Before there was a reason, you know what I mean? Like
Right.
when there was like every reason for her to be like, maybe you should like come back home instead of living in that $300 a month apartment and being like the de facto exterminator. Maybe, do you know what I mean? Like, she had plenty of reason to be like, you just be safe and come home. But she believed
Mm-hmm.
me no matter like what, and that goes a long way when you're starting to lose faith in yourself. Um, and my sister Ahana, uh, I wouldn't be an actor if it wasn't for her. I mean, not just because of that stupid story, but because of all the support. I mean, she financially, emotionally helped me out when I was in school and I was like, trying to work, but I was like, so focused on the acting thing. Like, I wouldn't, if it wasn't for my family, particularly like, my sister and my mom, there's no way I'm an actor today. Not in the same,
Right.
like, I wouldn't be working apprentice. So I'm so grateful to them. So they get um, the chief credit in terms of that. And of course, there have been other people in my life that have teachers and like significant others who've certainly helped me. But like when if I narrow it down, it's 100% them.
Right. Also in the movie, Courtney B. Vance and Niecy Nash play your parents, Louis and
Yeah.
Sylvia, and they were I just loved it because it felt like they had like this lived in relationship. Like I believe them as a married couple. What was it like working with the two of them and just kind of establishing like this relationship, with them as your parents? What was that like?
God, like so fun, like truly, truly so fun. I was so intimidated. Um, Courtney B. Vance is somebody that I'd looked up to for a while. Like he came to speak at my school because he had graduated there before. Obviously, I was there, and I was like really like impressed with him and like his career starting with Fences on Broadway, or like actually it started regionally, but anyway, Fences to like My Children, My Africa to 6 Degrees of Separation, all these wonderful like plays in uh, the American playwrights canon. he's just one of those guys that I looked up to. So like when I met him, I was super intimidated, but he was like, he cracked me up every single day and both of them just had this healthy dose of irreverence that I just thought was the best way to make a movie. And Nisi is just one of the funniest people alive, and she has such a warm heart. And they're both so fucking good at their jobs. Pardon my language, but like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Go ahead.
Like,
Yeah.
they slam it, so it's like everything was great.
Right. Because one of the things I really found so beautiful is like that the movie establishes the relationship that Elijah has with his father and with his mother. And, we find out halfway through the movie that Elijah's mother has a recurrence of cancer. The cancer returns. And that's when the movie just takes this very dramatic turn. And it was just really beautiful to see like this relationship of this Black mother and son. And I remember the scene, there's one specific scene, this is after Sylvia has passed, where your character is studying wine. He's studying for his wine test, and then tasting the wine, he just has these flashbacks of his mother, and that just devastated me. Like, it was such a beautiful scene. Can you talk to me about that scene and just kind of like establishing that relationship with Nisi on screen?
Oh, well, I mean that relationship between mother and son just felt so so realized on the page. Like that scene acts itself when you read that scene as it's written on the page, and like all the detail that Prentice put into it. It's immediately moving. It was actually one of those scenes that I was like, I'm just gonna like imagine like some of these situations that he's flashing back to, and that's all the work I'm gonna do for this, because it was all that it was necessary to like do that fully, because it was just so well written. And Nisi had that warmth that reminded me of my own mother. And so it's just like a perfect storm of, goodness, I guess. But yeah, it's like really the writing and like the established relationship of Nisi. And fortunately, Prentice is like a really caring director. So he made a lot of space for me that day, just like, hey, let's just like make sure everything's quiet. And like, he really, and just him saying that to the crew and everybody, it also like is an interesting thing, because it has nothing to do with the scene, but that still is like a level of tenderness and care that really, when you're putting yourself in a vulnerable place, goes a long way and can help you get there. So I really, really I'll never forget that day and how Prentice helped me that day. Do you know what I mean? That's really
right
what I think about when I think of that scene,
And then in the movie, we know that your character goes to Paris to study wine. Had that been your first time in Paris? Like, what was that experience shooting over there?
It was hectic.
Okay.
It was hectic. I mean, it was just crazy. I mean, there are certain things that you're like, oh, this is a once in a lifetime experience. And I don't care how tired I am, I'm going to force myself to enjoy this. And shooting in the neo-impressionist wing of the Musée d'Orsay by myself, essentially by myself, because it was just crew and like some people milling about, is a priceless experience. You know what I mean? Like that was incredible. It was also tempered by the fact that I was like in the middle of like beginning a breakup with my ex-girlfriend.
Oh my! Wow.
Yeah, it was intense. She was there, and like that's a whole other story. But like shooting the movie, it was the last week, and it was somehow the most intense week. Like the whole month and change that we shot in Memphis had nothing on how intense that Paris shoot was. That jet lag hit me. Yeah,
can only imagine. Yeah, because it's like a 6-hour flight, right? 6 or 7 hour flight, or
I don't know what it is, but like, I got off that plane and went straight to set, and I was messed up.
Wow.
So I don't know. I don't know. I just remember the Musée d'Orsay saying like forcing like straight jet black coffee and like trying to be cool.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, did you work on your French over there? Like, do you feel like your French has improved while you were there? Did you pick up some
I
French while you're there?
I pretended to, I pretended to, but both my parents speak French, but I never learned it, and like honestly, I'm kind of glad I didn't learn it because if I don't know like my native languages, I'd rather not know anything, like in terms of
Right.
like our country was colonized by the French, and I'm like, well, priority goes to Hal Pilar or Fulan, like uh, I'm not really worried about learning French right now.
Gotcha.
I gotta learn my people's language. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
So you speak the other dialects. So what are the other dialects in Mauritania?
no, that's what I'm saying. I don't know
Oh.
any of them. So like,
Oh, any of them. Okay.
well, in terms of pecking order, that's the thing that I feel the most kinship with. You know what I
Gotcha.
mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but
And I really, yeah, I really loved, especially like that whole scene when Elijah's in Paris, like it really opens up this image of like the Black diaspora, right? Is like Elijah is a Black American, but he's here and he's a stranger. You know
hmm
what I mean? So that
hmm
was really interesting to see. But so has your family seen Uncorked? What were their
yeah,
reactions? What did they think of the movie?
they've seen it a couple of times. I think it might be their favorite of my movies.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, well, my parents are very they're not going to see something like Patty Cakes where my character's name is Bastard the Antichrist because they're not about that. But you know what I mean? They're just not going to go see it. Actually, I'm not
Right.
even sure if they know it exists. So
Wow.
because I just didn't need to tell them, I mean, like, this isn't for you. You ain't going to see it. It's not. It's probably best you don't see this. Even though I
Right.
love that movie. But they really responded to this, and they've been telling all their friends about it. So I mean, I'm just happy that they're happy and all the fruits of their labor they can appreciate it. So
Great. So do you think that you'll work with Prentice, or do you hope that you'll work with Prentice Penny again?
yeah, I think it's the last thing that you said. I hope so for sure. No, we definitely talked about it for sure, but we'll see. I think he's great. I told him he can send me anything without a script, and I'm there. So love that guy.
Fantastic. Great. Well, thank you so much for coming to the Spectrum Lounge. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you. I hope I didn't ramble on too much. It's
Oh
been a
no,
long time
we
since
love
I talked
rambling.
about
We
that.
love rambling on here.
Okay, good.
Well, thank you, listeners, for another episode of the Spectrum Lounge. See you soon.